Star Wars, the exoteric level is the hero's journey of Luke Skywalker. The esoteric level is Princess Leia's story.
She didn't really have a mother to raise her. And like, there are no mothers throughout the entire film. So the original, like the OG feminine energy, like who is the original holder of that energy? And so it's interesting in like the social kind of collective idea that this feminine arc is incomplete because, I mean, for that very reason.
The big hormone enneagram.
I'm John Lekovich, 415, sexual self-pres, 458 trifix.
I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual, 9 with 1 wing, 974 trifix.
What up, it's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing-7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm a social self-preservation 9-wing-1, 963 trifix.
Like and subscribe on Apple and Spotify, and leave us a review. If you want to support the show with a donation, you can find us on Venmo at Big Hormone and paypal.me/Big Hormone.
All right. So here's my plugs. All right. Number one, Christmas is coming up, and the stocking stuffer that everybody is longing for is my book. So please buy my book and write reviews. And, you can't imagine the gratitude and tears that will follow that gift. So I don't know exactly when the release is. I think it's going to be very, very soon. I know that we talked about having it before Christmas, but Josh and I have completed our intro course on the Enneagram. It's an audio course that's tied into some, mostly audio, but there's like visuals and diagrams and all kinds of printouts and stuff. And, not to be arrogant or whatever, but I mean, it's like the best thing I think there is out there on the Enneagram that I've come across. Like it's I was like, damn, like it's good and it's very listenable. And so, buy that when it comes out. Gift that to people. Even if you know the Enneagram pretty well, like we go through it in a very deep and systematized way. And we cover essence, personality, the types. Let's see. Rage, shame, and fear. Those sections are really fucking good. And it's really good. So that should be on the enneagramschool.com pretty soon.
That's exciting.
I'm hoping to do a in-person workshop in March in New York City. I've had requests for that, and I'm thinking about doing something experiential on essence and using breath work, stuff that you can't just get in an audio way. And so I'm figuring that out, figure out if I can afford to rent out a space. But if you're interested in that, look for it or sign up or send an email out to the enneagramschool.com. And then last thing is Alexandra and I are kicking around the idea of her leading and me assisting a new attachment type support group class. So that was a really deep and intimate dive, and that was Alexander and Josh. Josh is traveling a lot, so I'm gonna be a hexad backup in an attachment world. That's really Alexandra's baby, and was really meaningful for her. And I think people that were involved, I know that a lot of them are still meeting on a regular basis, and it was really impactful.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we'll be saying more about that. There was like an episode like a year and a half ago or something that Josh and Alexander did on attachment type support group. So if you're curious about that, that'll also be listen to that, and that'll also be on the enneagramschool.com eventually. That's all I got. You got anything? Do you want to promo anything?
I have a podcast. It's called Sinsomnia.
Oh, you do? What is it? What is that?
You can listen to it on all platforms, and we talk about dreams in the Enneagram, and it's called Sinsomnia.
Cool. Listen to Sinsomnia.
Listen to Sinsomnia, yeah. We're about to finish up the head center.
Yeah, what have you been doing? What do you say kind of like what you've been doing?
Literally we are kind of like the guinea pigs of where does the Enneagram and why does the Enneagram live in our psyches? And so we have dreams, and we pull from multiple different kinds of texts and stuff like that. And so we've gone through a very, very, very basic understanding, but a long process through each 3 instincts. And now we're closing up on each 3 centers. So we spent, 1 to 2 months each on those. So there's probably a year and a half worth of content now. So after the head center, which we're kind of coming to a close soon, I'm just going to freeform and just do all kinds of different weird episodes about all kinds of different things. So no longer in like a kind of, a linear sort of way.
Awesome. What's also I forgot to reread it, but a couple months ago I found an old essay I did on Salome and like the
wow.
And the role she played in a lot of like romantic art. And I went at Evergreen. I took a class called Dark Romantics for an entire year. That was my only class. And
nice.
Yeah, so it was like the Dance of the Seven Veils and like what that represented. So this ties in too, but I haven't I forgot to revisit this fucking stupid essay and remember like what exactly I was getting out of it. But trying to organize my thoughts, but there's a lot of stuff. But
I was gonna say Salome and Star Wars, like where's the meeting?
No, so should I just launch into it or whatever? Like,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm very curious as to what the trajectory is that you're looking at.
All right, so like I said, I've been working with a lot of women on individuation and sexual instinct. I mean, men too, but like that path is much clearer to me and just my experience. And, and then, like I said, like in some of these like more profound experiences, I'm getting these like flashes of like how the universe is this, these 2 forces trying to meet through a third force, which is like, matter and space and time, like this, well, like maybe existence or something, like the conditions of existence or like the third force, something like that. And so anyway, the way that like, let's see, this whole kind of like sense, and this is kind of half baked, so here it goes. But like, it's almost like the masculine needs the feminine's eyes to see itself through, to really grow in a certain way, and vice versa. It's like that, like even in the concept of like anima animus, right? As like, you need something opposite to it to really see your own, like to see your own nature reflected through somehow. Like, and how like men trying to like be men, be like macho in a certain way, it seems so substanceless, right? Like men that do the whole kind of like macho like thing, it always felt kind of not gay, but kind of gay to me in a certain way. And I was like, what is this? Because it's like, I know I'm going all over the place, but I started, this feeling of like, oh, their performance of masculinity is like for the male gaze.
For men, yeah. Yeah.
It's for other men. And I've been noticing too, like in this, like, in this, I'm going to say the obvious, but a lot, like most men don't like women. They don't like feminine energy. They don't like the feminine.
Yeah.
And it's, I knew that intellectually, but I'm like seeing that so deeply in how like completely disinterested they are in women and like femininity itself.
Oh yeah.
And like, as at least as a heterosexual guy, like I just like being around women and feminine energy. And it was so like recognizing that's not like, the depth with which that goes is just like crazy. And so I've been like seeing that clear, and I've been seeing, as I've been working with women, like the wounding that a lot of women carry because their fathers or other masculine figures in their lives carried this complete disinterest in in femininity.
And mothers, not even just fathers, but mothers too.
Oh yeah, you mean like mothers in in daughters? Are you saying?
Yeah, like I would say just like both parents carry a lot of like stereotypical kind of like patriarchal ideals of things, and so femininity is just completely shamed or misunderstood, and oftentimes mothers will have the same kind of, it's a different flavor, but it's like the same kind of secret hatred towards that energy for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, with that in mind, like Alexander just turned on fucking Star Wars, the original 1977 A New Hope, and like as a kid, like I fucking loved Star Wars. Like I was making Star Wars movies with my action figures as like a little kid and stuff, and I used to watch The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi like over and over again, and like they're aesthetically cooler to me. Like I like the aesthetics much better. The original one is too like washed out for me. But Alexander's watching it, and I was like, wow, damn, this is a much better movie than I remembered. I was like, damn, like it's so, I know it's like the slop of the masses, but at the same time, I was just like, whoa, like the characters are like really fun, and they like their interactions are fun, and it was just like, wow, this is just the archetypes are really clear and fun. And but as I was watching it, there's like how familiar are you with it? Like have you seen it? Like is it just vague familiarity?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the kind of family that loved Star Wars. I mean, not to the point of like obsession, but I am aware of it. I think like it was kind of the newer ones I haven't been keeping up with, but I know of them and kind of like where the storyline goes and whatever. But for the most part, I just don't have like the minute tiny details, like still, there's some of it's still there, but a lot of it's not.
Enter the five fix. So I'm painting in the living room, watching with Alexandra, and I'm like, damn, this is pretty good. And then, so the thing is that like really struck me was there's a scene where Princess Leia has been captured by Darth Vader, and there's this old guy named Grand Moff Tarkin who's like the decrepit old masculine, and then you've got the Dark Father of Darth Vader, right? And they're like, you're gonna reveal the location of the hidden rebel base. It will blow up your planet. And Princess Leia in this movie is, she's a princess, and she's like a senator or something like that. Like she's some kind of, I think she's a senator or some kind of government thing.
Yeah.
And they blow up fucking Alderaan, and you don't know it, and like if you're watching the story fresh, you don't know that Darth Vader is her fucking dad and standing by facilitating the destruction of her home planet. Basically like taking everything from her. And I was like, that like, you see Luke Skywalker coming to deal with the realization that Darth Vader is his father, and that Luke Skywalker might have the darkness in him too. But there's no dealing with like Princess Leia's fucking the most horrible thing that happens in the movies.
Right.
There's no like, that was my dad, like it's not just my planet got blown up and everybody I love and know got blown up. It's like my dad made that happen. And it like, like with all the stuff with these like, women I've been working with and stuff, like this sense of the way that like the paternal masculine, like this it's like a paternal masculine that is not interested in the feminine. Like it destroys everything. Like there's a certain way that like Princess Leia, she is the two things that a father could want a daughter to be: his little princess and a very worldly, accomplished, like you're a senator. Like, wow, my
diplomatic.
You're diplomatic, but you're intellectual. You're accomplished. You're respectable. You are. You're also kind of a boss bitch in a certain way. There's all those like layers, and so, but there's no sexuality in them. It's entirely a feminine that is somehow pleasing to a dark, sexless father figure. Because like Darth Vader is like, he's a sexless father, right? He just like, he's half robot. And one of the things, you know, and in that scene where they're the destruction happens, like Princess Leia is a complete white and Darth Vader is in absolute black. And so it's like the contrast, the polarity is like extra strong.
Right.
And so there's this way that like, it's like I saw in this moment of like Princess Leia, archetypally speaking, was like, she is the good daughter. She is the good daughter that is trying to be daddy's princess and trying to be daddy's like proud of me. To get this Erosless father to be interested in her. You know, like every little girl flirts with their father and as a safe zone in a way to like experience the masculine, right? Like I mean, I just see like little girls flirting all the time with their dads, and it's like a safe zone where it's like dad's not gonna do something sexual or gross. He's just gonna be like, wow, you're so amazing. Ideally, like he's just gonna be like enamored and interested and fascinated by this little girl, right? And every boy wants to show off to their mom and wants their mothers to go, wow, you're such a juicy boy, and like women are gonna love you. You know, I've been recognizing that kind of wounding, like with my mom having her issues. Like she just was like very scared of whatever, and like, oh, I like that weird Oedipal Electra thing. Like there's a thing there, right? Like it's not necessarily I want to like kill my dad to get my mom, but I just want to be like savored, right? Like you want to be you want some kind of like some juice there, right? But as a kind of a prototype for relating to those energies, you know, and I'm not just talking like heterosexual relationships. Like I think this goes in a lot of different forms and stuff, but these sort of archetypes are how they get set up. Is it making sense so far?
Yeah, it's making sense.
Okay. So, all right. So, let's see. So then I was like, you know, on one hand, Princess Leia has built herself up to be like the good, acceptable woman and daughter for a patriarchal whatever. And then, but in so doing, her whole world gets blown apart because it's sort of empty, right? Like she becomes a princess of nothing and a senator of nothing. Like her planet is rocks now. He's taken everything. And I see this a lot, like in working with different women. I mean, there's a male version too, but like, oh, I built myself up, and then this like these personality constructs or these things I'm engaging the world with, like they don't actually mean anything to me. I'm not connected to them in like a personalized Eros way. And so, all right, so then Empire Strikes Back. Oh, well, actually, so, all right, when she's in an identity, when the feminine is in this identity of relating to like the dark father, the dark masculine, the patriarchy, whatever you want to call it, who is her erotic complement? Who is her male pair? It's her fucking brother.
Yeah, her twin brother.
Her twin brother, and there's no Eros between them. You know, and I was talking with you know, like last night, and we were talking about like this pattern that she and a lot of other women have faced of like dating these like guys that are like great people, but there's no Eros there, and or it gets compartmentalized where there's like a lot of Eros, but they're like shitty people, and it's like when the feminine is like still oriented toward a masculine energy that's actually not interested in it, then you're going to attract like a like really nice masculine whose own masculine Eros is not interested in the feminine either. It's just like a buddy energy. like when they like, you remember that part where they like have to like go across this like cavern in the Death Star, and he ropes the ceiling, and she like kisses him, and she's like, good luck. And even if you don't know that they're like brother and sister, you're still like, ugh, you know?
Oh yeah. Like I remember when I first watched it being confused, not knowing anything about backstory or whatever, like, are they like a thing? I can't, it's too awkward. I can't tell.
Yeah. There's no sense that like they're gonna rock each other's world or something.
Yeah. And then the revealing of the sibling thing, I'm like, oh God, like what was that?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's awkward.
And so so then, Empire Strikes Back. And then there's this whole thing where they're getting attacked, they're on the ice planet and they're getting invaded by the Empire. And Princess Leia is like still being boss bitch, but there's this masculine energy around that doesn't care about her being a princess or a senator. And he like kind of makes fun of her. He's like, calls her your worshipfulness. And like, he just drives her crazy. And he's like, he doesn't fit into her boxes. But like, Han Solo is like her opposite. Like he's a real match for her because he is like from senator princess to like smuggler pirate guy. And she is like totally like selfless and he's like self-interested, right? And his interest in her is he's like just into her. Like he seems to like kind of respect her but also make fun of her, and he's not buying all the story or whatever. And they get into this thing, and so like, he represents her self-interest in a certain way. Because I think a lot of like, especially women are often conditioned to not respond from their own wanting. They're conditioned to respond to like a functional feminine, be the princess, be the senator, be the mother, but even like a sexless mother, right? There's like not a sense of being in touch with, I don't know, something driving their own desire. And so then in the movie, and you can interrupt me and tell me I'm wrong or, whatever. But like, they go through space and they end up in that asteroid, and they end up in the bottom of the asteroid, and it's a wet, dark, moist cave. It's the unconscious, it's the vagina, right? It's like this, she's actually wet now. And when she's a little scared by this, there's those like little bat things in there, and that's where Han Solo and Princess Leia kiss.
Yeah, right.
She's actually like wet for him, and she's connecting with her own, what do I want? What do I need? What's my Eros? So Han Solo represents her creative Eros, and she gets him, and then they end up in the Cloud City, and Han Solo gets captured, right? And so now she's got it, but then she gets a taste of it, but she loses it. And so she has to be active now to like, it's kind of like when the unconscious is like knocking on your door, and it's like,
it awakens something. Yeah.
It awakens something, and then you got to go meet it. So she's finding her own Eros, and then we get into Return of the Jedi. I'm going to pause. Is it making sense and interesting?
Yeah.
And
it's making sense. Yeah. No, I don't have any comments or critiques right now because I am following with you.
Sure.
But I do, like, after you're explaining all of this, I have, like, just from my perspective, like a totally different avenue that I would go in with the movie, but it's like kind of irrelevant to what you're saying. So I'd rather like listen to yours first.
Okay, cool. All right. So, all right, you get to Return of the Jedi, and how do I put this? Like, Return of the Jedi, the most famous thing about Return of the Jedi is Princess Leia in a bikini.
Yeah, of course.
Like Star Wars, the exoteric level is the hero's journey of Luke Skywalker. The esoteric level is Princess Leia's story. And so they go to Jabba's palace to save Han Solo from this gangster. And Jabba is gross. Like that's his main feature, is he's gross.
He's disgusting, slime ball.
He's a big phallic slug. Like he's a giant gross phallus with a gross phallic tongue. And in pursuing her own Eros, she ends up captured and enslaved in a metal bikini. And so, what is the like archetypal betrayal of a daughter toward their father? Like, how does a father feel betrayed by their daughter? She's a slut, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like That's the archetype, is like, I'm going to find out my daughter's a little slut or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's in a process, like the Darth Vader masculine has no use for the feminine to have its own Eros, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
uphold being a good daughter and a good mother and a good senator and a good whatever. But it's like, oh, but your own, like, pussy power, your own whatever, like that Eros thing is a little gross to me. So like, I don't want to know about it. And then, often, like, it sounds like, my experience or what I've seen and whatever, like women will sometimes, or the feminine will, like, go into this place of like finding their own Eros by having like their in quotes, like hoe phase, or like being too sexual in some way, but it's like, it's still not their own.
Yeah.
Like they're overcorrecting, and
or they're reacting to
exactly
something. Yeah.
So they're still enslaved. They're either Darth Vader's prisoner or Jabba's prisoner, right? She's still enslaved, and she's sexualized and objectified. And I see a lot of like people on their path to individuation. They get there and they're like, oh yeah, I'm being myself. I'm being free. This is my Eros, and it's a very like, oh, I'm autonomous and individuated. And it's like, no, your psyche is in reaction to something. It's still chained to something.
Mm-hmm.
So then when they have the big thing where they start to actually like free Han Solo and save him, like, Princess Leia saves him. She like gets him, presses that button, gets him out of the frozen thing. But then the big battle is like over this giant sand vagina, the Sarlacc, right? And this, like, Princess Leia saves herself. Like, nobody saves Princess Leia. Like, she uses the chain and kills Jabba, chokes him.
Right.
And
which is symbolic in that way. You're using the chains, that are binding you.
And after that, like, people will kind of, like, the thing about Princess Leia, to me at least, like at the end there, yeah, she is sexualized, but she's not a sexual object. She's like, she's still in the bikini, and she's like helping Luke Skywalker kill all the bad guys before they jump off together.
Mm-hmm.
And like, she's just like a sexual, full erotic being. Like, she's just like, she's strong, she's juicy, she can, she's like to me, it's like a symbol. It's like, I like fucking stupid Marvel shit, right? And in a lot of like these movies, they'll have the male hero shirtless. And I used to think that was like, to be like, all right, all the girlfriends that got dragged to this thing, like, here's a little something for you. But I realized I think it tends to be more for the men to see the power fantasy.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that.
And I think it's like, it's not like, I'm not saying the Princess Leia thing is for the women to know the power fantasy or something like that. But it's like, it's the way that like the masculine hero with his big muscles is like, this is a fully realized self, or fully realized ego, or fully realized person. He's like completely powerful and like whatever. It's like, she's in her like sexy, feminine, badass power, but she's like found her own Eros, and and then the rest of the movie is her and Han Solo just like fighting together, and she's like got her masculine integrated with her, and it's just like they're together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last piece is that her, I know it's more Luke Skywalker's story, but like Luke Skywalker being the son, and the son, all sons feel like their fathers were like disinterested, and where the fuck were you? And why, like, the emperor represents the grandfather. And I think most sons, whether they have a language for it or not, recognize on some level that like all of our dads are like still somehow caught up in like the expectations of our grandfathers towards our dads.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And we're like, what do you, it's like, I'm your son now. Like, the relationship is here now, but you're still like hooked psychologically into being whatever, having some reaction to your own dad. And then so the son feels like actually the relationship is not here. So the emperor is like Luke Skywalker being a son, being like, Dad, be my dad. Like, fuck grandpa. And then eventually, dad throws grandpa down the well.
Right. Yeah.
And one of the things about Darth Vader and his role in this like patriarchal, dark father, whatever, removed father kind of energy is that like when I was a kid and I saw Darth Vader in that first movie go in that hallway and just like with all the stormtroopers and like look like a badass. So it was like he looks scary. He looks like completely powerful and absolute black against this completely white background, and everything else is white and he's black. And he's got that voice and all this stuff, and he's got a red lightsaber. You know, as you see, like if you put light on Darth Vader, his costume looks ridiculous. Like he's like one of the main features that's ridiculous is that even though his mask is cool, like he can't look down.
Yeah, he can't move his head very well.
Yeah, he's got this weird neck piece. He's supposed to be a Jedi Sith Lord or whatever, a warrior, and he can't even look down. And then, you know, in the story, like he's got cybernetic limbs, but then like even like his suit is like this weird, it's like some kind of like shitty pilot jumpsuit with like a cod piece and like a little dumb computer thing on his chest, and you know he's wheezing. So it's like you like pay more attention to him, and he looks like ridiculous. And then you realize the voice that gives him his power, like the voice is not his voice, because they take off his mask and he's like, Luke, tell your sister you were right. And he's like this pathetic, shriveled up, impotent old guy. And it's like Luke Skywalker like needed his dad so bad. And then he sees what his dad really is, and he's like, oh, I don't need a dad. I'm my own dad. You know what I mean? He's like, so anyway, as nerdy as all that is, like it's just like, whoa. And it came up in so many different sessions. I know it's partially my own. When I get hooked on something, it's like really in my brain. But it seemed to be useful and helpful to several people I shared it with as just an interesting metaphor for finding one's own Eros and these different layers of relationships of masculine and feminine.
Right.
So yeah, I was curious, like, I don't know what you thought.
Oh God, okay. I mean, I love that take because I can definitely see that. Where I was going to zoom out even further than that. And like, so okay, how do I explain mine? Because this has also just been in my head. Like I would zoom out and first know that this, like the Star Wars mythology is channeled and created in George Lucas's mind. So these are all like his and therefore the culture at the time's concepts of femininity and masculinity. And so in that case, like for what was going, and I think I did know as well that he worked with Carrie Fisher, who plays Princess Leia, in like strengthening her character. So it wasn't all just his shitty dialogue, but she was like a part of it saying, no, I should probably say this or blah, blah, blah. So that's cool.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
But then it's like, I also saw something that the total time of women that are not Princess Leia speaking in the Star Wars trilogy,
they don't
like
exist.
the whole first like 3 movies is literally, I think, 63 seconds long.
Totally. Right. No, like that was part of my thing too with this, like, oh, the Princess Leia story is the esoteric level, because I was like, she's the only, like, she's the feminine. Like, she represents all femininity, whereas, like, the masculine is much more fractured in the movies.
Yeah, she holds all of it, which is, so what's interesting about that is, like, I feel like we're getting in Star Wars for when it came out during its time, you know, it was revolutionary. Her character is revolutionary because it's like, here's, like you're saying, here's someone who's, like, not really sexualized, sort of diplomatic, and she could be a real asshole, which is like a lot of women were like, yay, like an asshole.
Yeah.
she stood up to a lot of the characters.
Luke and Han.
Yeah. And even too, just like, you know, her keeping secrets and stuff like she kind of knew how to play the game, essentially. Like there's so much to her character that's like really in depth for its time. But the thing that I see is that it's like really only a glimpse of the feminine journey. Like I don't think it's a complete, which is interesting because for that like story to continue, isn't then her and Han Solo's kid, Kylo Ren, in like the new movies?
Yeah, I hate the fucking new ones. Yeah.
But
so
even
stupid.
even so, like if we're thinking of like so typical like feminine and masculine, when they come together, they create like the third, and it is this kind of this new energy. It's supposed to be revolutionary. It's supposed to break the old traditions and offer something new. It's hermaphroditic. It's, like this androgynous. And what's interesting is that if we go on, I don't really care to talk about the newer movies, but if we go on in their trajectory, they create Kylo Ren, which basically does the same shit as Darth Vader. And like a whole, and it's like, maybe things are a little different and there's a little bit of a shift in the masculine and feminine energies because now we have a female Jedi, like that kind of thing.
Right.
But I mean, even that, like the original movies and now the current, it's like showing this really small shift of like where these energies are going. Do you see what does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so in the original Star Wars trilogy, like the fact that Leia's home is destroyed is like the basis of the way that I see it in like the feminine journey, is that it is so fucked by like patriarchal kind of stuff. And I'm aware of how overused that word is and how people misuse it because it's not just men, it's, women and men who can be patriarchal. But these types of like dogmatic kind of ways of living life, like individually, collectively, societally, whatever, that has been the way for however long. And I think it's too like part of the sort of like Apollonian light, like all light kind of trajectory of the hero's journey. So even you say like the Marvel characters that are like super buff and like whatever, it's just like these Apollonian figures that are like, I'm going to defeat the darkness, and like that's the whole thing, is just defeating the darkness. And so the thing that's interesting though is that the darkness is where the feminine is. And so like that's why I kind of feel like Leia's character in the movies, like she knows a bit of the darkness. Like you can tell that she has some kind of connection to it, but because she has lost her home planet, she has no other female companions where typically like feminine trajectories, like the archetypal trajectory is more community based, like it's more connected with other women and kind of passing along and understanding your sort of cosmic influence. Like that's more of the feminine trajectory that is not like the Apollonian hero's journey. So, but women have like therefore kind of fallen into the sort of male gaze of what, like, okay, let's just put a woman character in like the man's journey and expect it like that's what's going to happen.
Right.
And it's not, which is why it's interesting that you even bring up in the very, very beginning Salome, because femininity is dualistic. Like when you're dealing in the dark, you have kind of like this I don't know, like this more kind of sorceress, sort of like intuitive version. And then you have this insane, psychotic version in this kind of dual, like you have, if you want to put it, I guess, more simply, like you have the mother, and then you have like the death mother. And it's like a woman also too has to understand both of those energies, like work with both of those and find them in herself. Because like you're saying, even in Leia's character, like you're not just a mother, you're not just a sex object, but also and this is where like I would debate about the Han Solo thing and the Anima Animus thing, because you're also not the lover. Like you're also like, what is a woman completely on her own without the male gaze? Do you see what I'm saying?
I think so. Like the positioning her with Han Solo is still rendering her in the role of lover.
Kind of. It's like Leia doesn't exist outside of the male gaze at all in those movies. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, and I like how you're saying too, at least with the binding thing, like, yeah, she is bound to like Darth Vader and Jabba, but like even with Han Solo, it's like there's no break in between all of that like what makes him not some kind of unconscious bind as well, that like she could just be projecting the father or the whatever. Like he's a super puer kind of archetype too. So that is opposite in like her kind of diplomatic, more that. So, but it's also like she's only diplomatic because that was conditioned onto her. Like she is conditioned to kind of just fulfill the sort of patriarchal kind of role in her society because that's what she was left with. And because she's kind of like fulfilling that, then of course like her opposite would seem more attractive, and yet she doesn't understand like you're gonna fall for the opposite when you aren't sure what the self really is. If she's kind of operating on, and like how you're saying, where people are kind of going after something as a reaction, you know, rather than like coming from themselves. Like, you know, Han Solo could just be her going after a reaction against this sort of like what she knows in this sort of diplomacy and, you know, being a senator and blah, blah, blah. Like that could also just be a reaction. And that's where the darkness of the feminine comes in order to discern that. And like the true kind of animus that a woman would have is to be able to really go deep into the unconscious and understand that discernment and understand what the projections are and what they aren't and blah, blah, blah. But that never happens for her because she's never really taken there, I guess.
So like, you know, in my Princess Leia story, like Han Solo is like a part of herself, right? It's like he's like the animus or whatever, but and I guess I'm trying to, let's see, this is like supposed to be a question, but I don't know if it'll come out as a question, but it's like if I'm reading in my version, like all like just like sort of representations of Leia's psyche, like how like are you talking about like there needs to be a period where she detaches from all kind of relationships to be in and of herself? Is that what you're describing?
I think so. Yeah. And that's why it's like, you know, you even kind of see that like with Luke in a way, you know, you kind of see that like,
he does
you know,
break off.
Yeah, like, you know, because when he's training and stuff, it's that like spiritual master kind of training where you're like on your own, you're learning how to wield the force and blah, 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 like, you know, that kind of thing. That, you know, that's sort of like his way of doing that. But there is a way too that like the feminine may also go off and do their own thing.
Right.
And I think that's why it's hard in Star Wars, because we're only like, it's hard to place every character in Princess Leia's mind, because like we're not if that's like her arc, then yeah, it's like kind of, it's complete for what it is, because then she does go on training in like the new movies and whatever. She trains, I think, Rey or whoever that is. But like because it's not sort of like focused on her, we don't really like what we see is what we get. And so we don't actually get like her individuating journey. And that's where I think it is like George Lucas and the culture at the time, that wasn't happening anywhere. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that's not happening in the culture. That's not happening. Like women are still like super repressed. I mean, men are too, but like, there's so much still misunderstood with women. And so like we're kind of getting a snidbit of like, okay, here's at least like a different character journey. And like a female character that is strong and can do different things. But at the same time, like she still is fulfilling a more masculine role. And that's why I find it interesting that then like their kid is Kylo Ren, and it kind of tells you that like, well, I mean, like you can't exactly. Yeah. Like that, maybe not like, oh, she was a bad mother or something, but you have to think like she didn't really have a mother to raise her. And like, there are no mothers throughout the entire film. So the original, like the OG feminine energy, like what all is projected, which like your mom and your dad are where your ideas unconsciously of those two energies exist. Like, and if you don't have a mom or a dad, it's whatever figure fulfills that role, the nurturing and the protective role. So it could be projected onto a church, it could be a school, an organization, or it could be like a caregiver of some kind. So it's like, but they're like the original holders of those energies. So it's interesting that in Star Wars, there are like no mothers. So like who is the original holder of that energy? And so it's interesting in like the social kind of collective idea that this feminine arc is incomplete because, I mean, for that very reason, it's the story of the father and like the light and the kind of like Apollo sort of hero's journey. And I think like the dark trajectory or the darkness, the lunar energy that would be femininity is like, still trapped in a way. Still working its way through.
Do you know of any kind of like stories or nerd well-known like archetypes that do like like Star Wars is just like a collective archetypal story, right? And do you know something that does some justice to the feminine's journey?
I mean, I feel like a lot of stories will at least give like something, some kind of like insight to the feminine journey, but it's just never the full thing. I'm not sure if we've gotten to the full thing yet. I'm trying to think. I think, I would have to have some more time to actually gather like resources for that, because right now I feel like I know like the only thing I'm really like paying attention to a lot of the time is like, is a female character even written well?
Yeah.
Like, is this a believable person? Like, because a lot of like men can write women just like shit,
Yeah.
And I mean, same with women can write men like terribly, and women can write women like shit. I think it depends on the writing, because it really does like. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like a story is only really going to go as far as the creator's own personal stuff. Like, because you have to think like your creative projects are kind of reflections of your inner processes and your inner world. And so it's like, you're only going to go so far, like the story's only going to go so far depending on your own understanding of it.
Yeah.
And like how things are playing out. And so I feel like if it's really like, insignificant, small amount.
Right.
I know nonfiction things that explain the feminine journey well, but not fiction.
What are I want to ask you that, and then I have another movie in mind that I want to ask you about. But yeah, what are some nonfiction things that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, I of course go to like female Jungians. So like, I mean, Marie-Louise von Franz was fantastic listening to her. Barbara Hanna, I think was her name. But Marion Woodman is like obviously the best. Yeah. And her books like really go into the like deeply unconscious, like where women are trapped in their father complexes and like where they are basically being, their energies are somehow being really like eaten by kind of death mother complexes. Like it's all that fun stuff. And her work reads like fiction. House? That's one of them. Yeah, but she has like so many books. And it's just her story, like the way that she writes to it often reads like fiction because it's so poetic. So, I mean, I would recommend anyone reading her, not even just women, but even if her titles have more of a like women's journey kind of thing, like she even writes in it, like, you know, men can read this too. It's not just work for women all the time.
Yeah, no, I've been wanting to check that one out, the Leaving Father's House one or whatever, but because I mean, you know, when I work with like clients and stuff, like a lot of them come to me through like want to work on their sexual instinct, right? And like just, you know, and that brings out, that's typically a very individuating force, right? Like that, like when you're able to pull out someone's sexual energy somewhere, that's like a really individuating force. So I want to understand like the feminine journey a lot clearer because it just comes up so much and so deeply.
It's so complicated. It's really complicated. I think too, because even just when you look at mythology, like women just take on a whole, like, because I think it's like people like just in general with those types of energies, I think she kind of, you know, masculine and feminine energies are inside of the mother and the father, and they are like your god and goddess. That's where the god and the goddess live. And you know, it's actually really interesting too. You might like to read Jung's Answer to Job. It's kind of like a shorter essay, but it's a long essay, but I forget what you were talking about in the beginning. About like the whole men kind of needing to be seen in the feminine eyes, or like this is interesting. Do you know like the story of Job in the Bible? I'm also going to do like a totally bastardized version of this.
Yeah, is that the one where he like keeps getting shit on and he's just like and God's like, and he's like, I love God, and God just keeps like fucking with him.
Yes,
an idiot.
So like Jung for his time was just like, I think I can speak on behalf of most Christians and be like, what the fuck was up with this part in the Bible? Like, we're supposed to care, and yet God is such a fucking dick, you know? So like he writes about it, but I was like, where is this going to go? And I was reading it, and then it took such an interesting turn because he brings in Sophia, which is like goddess.
Wisdom.
Yes. And Marion Woodman often talks about her too. It's like part of the feminine journey is to kind of sit on the lap of Sophia, as she says. And he like talks about how in this moment where Job is like, what are you doing to me, God? And God's like, I fucking hate you. And he like, there's this moment where God realizes sort of like how much of an asshole he's being, and he sees it in like, I forget exactly how it's worded, but he sees it in like the I think it's like the people of Jerusalem or something like that. But basically, Jung was interpreting it as this is the moment where God remembered Sophia and remembered Sophia's love for him. and this like softened God in order to become in the New Testament God. So it's basically like it was Sophia reflecting God and his like terribleness and awfulness and stuff like that, and him remembering his counterpart, and then being able to go into the New Testament with, now we know Jesus comes into the New Testament and it's this new force and stuff like that. Of course, I just like totally ruined it, but like, and he says it way better than I could, but it's just this really interesting, like I've never heard something like this. And reading it, it has this like heavy kind of archetypal qualities to like how femininity and masculinity is in the Bible as well, which is like, you know, the great story or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, to that thing that you're riffing off, that like the feminine needs the masculine to see itself through, and the masculine needs the feminine to see itself through. Is, you know, it's not literally like a man needs a woman or something like that, but just like on an inner level, it's like that our consciousness is dualized, you know, and it's like the caduceus was like coming to me of that the intertwined meeting of two forces, that there's a third force between them, and it's like you have to be the third force that holds the two forces. And so the like to keep it like as a ever moving entwinement of forces versus like a self annihilating Ouroboros, you know what I mean? Like, that was like really a thing. But with like let's see, I should have fucking reread my little stupid essay I wrote like 10 years ago for college, but because I was like, it's pretty good. I found it. I was like, damn, I'm a better writer then than I am now.
Oh yeah, on Salome.
Yeah, on Salome. And like, you know, what came to me there, at least, like, you know the story?
Yeah, I do.
You know, so it's like, was her father Herod? The King Herod was her father?
Yeah, I mean, I read the play and it was like confusing as to who was who, but yeah.
So yeah, I think the story's in the Bible, right? Is like, after Christ is dead, John the Baptist is like preaching, and there's something there where Herod still like respects John the Baptist, even though John the Baptist is like causing trouble. And there's something in his daughter Salome that she's like, Dad, like you're a weak masculine or something. Like you're like, I want you to be a strong, potent masculine, and you're not. And then so they're having some kind of party, and she's like, I'm going to do the dance of the seven veils. And he's like, oh yes, please, daughter. Like, it's such a, I don't know, whatever, sexy dance or something, that I will give you anything in the kingdom. I'll give you anything in the kingdom if you do this dance, because wow. And then she does this amazing sexy dance, and she's like, I want John the Baptist's head. And he's like, God damn it. And
anything but that.
Anything but that. But he takes off John the Baptist's head for her. And I think it was like what I got there. I have to, you know, I should have read my stupid essay, but you know, there's this thing of like the feminine wanting the Darth Vader to be like powerful and potent, and not this like sexless robot, you know, father. And there's a thing too about wanting that father to have that kind of eros for the daughter that's not going to be acted on in a sexual way, just to be like, wow, you're amazing, and like, wow, look at this dance you're doing, and all these layers of yourself. You know, like, I like wanting just that masculine to be turned on, like in like an intellectual center way of just like, wow, the feminine is this rich, dark, unconscious thing that's going to take me into places and give me like real psychological potency, you know, instead of this like dry, like, you know, when we were talking earlier about the sort of hollow masculine, I always think of like Americans' fetish with like operators and like military operators and special forces operators that are like, you know, just look like the most like dry, like, you know, like just, you know, they're little Oakleys and like, you know, like bunch of guns, and they have no hobbies other than shooting things, you know, and like, so anyway, there's like a weird thing where there's like this, like wanting to bring that encounter and somehow through the lens of like cutting off the head of John the Baptist, which like John the Baptist is like this almost maybe like the Emperor in Star Wars or something, but it's like got Herod hooked in some like external way, and not like listening to himself, or I don't know, something like that. But I was like that part where it was like recognizing that the daughter energy, the young femme energy, wants that like safe Eros energy as like the prototypes that she can experience, like her, that end of the God polarity, God goddess polarity, and like go out later. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, I guess I haven't ever like, so when I first read that story and, the play, I guess, it's just so bizarre. I actually never thought about, I think it's just like, it felt so kind of just lunar, like insanity sort of thing that I haven't really thought of it. But one thing I think I would think of too now, like, and, maybe I'm just spitballing, but, the way that I would see that again is still like, because John the Baptist, like at least in the one play that I read, he was kind of like this like prophet, sort of like he just, probably a 9 spitting God consciousness out, and she just found this so amazing and tried to originally like seduce him. And he just wasn't having it, He was just like, I'm a prophet. So, you know what I mean? Like, she really tried. And it was because he kept denying her that she's like, I want to fucking kill him. And that's why, like, in the end, like, it's so insane because she starts like saying about like, oh, and now I'll kiss you. Like, now I get to kiss you. And she's fucking kissing his severed head. And to me, it's almost like,
interesting.
In that sense, that's like the death of Eros. Like that's the death of love and the insanity that the death of Eros can bring in that darker side of the feminine, like the death mother kind of, and like you hold both of those things as, in the feminine energy, it's both.
I mean, say more about like what death mother is and this.
Oh.
And like, yeah, like that, there is like a erotic piece in this, like death mother, right? Like even her like kissing John the Baptist's head, like I'm kind of like I'm, take my head, baby, like praying mantis, like there's something like, wow, feeling really wanted, or even if I'm dead, it's like something like that.
You're chosen even after you're dead.
Yeah.
I guess, we talk about it a lot kind of like in Enneagram world about like the mother's gaze when you are growing up. And like, can you imagine having a mother whose response is just cold when you are looking for warmth and love and stuff like that? And like what that does psychologically to a person. So like that character of like the mother, maybe you had a great mom, but like she gives you that type of those eyes,
Oof, yeah.
And that becomes internalized as the death mother. And so, that Descent to the Goddess is a good book too for feminine journey. I think you'd really like that. I kind of wonder if the writer is like social blind or something. I think you'd actually really enjoy that one for like client stuff.
A death mother thing that has come up with a lot of like in the men I've been working with is like, we're talking about like the betrayal of like the, where the daughter feels toward the father and the daughter's betrayal, to her father. And at least like, I don't know if this is the or something, but it's come up a lot where the experience of like being like forgotten about in like a grocery store or a mall or for me it was a gym, but there's like experience where like I remember this where I was really, really little and there was some like camp or something for little kids so that parents could go exercise at this gym. And I remember like I was social blind then. Like I hated other little kids, and I'm like stuck with all these strangers and I'm like looking around like, where's my mom? And feeling like, just like this like weird feeling of abandonment. Like it wasn't even like emotional in the sense of like I'm sad. It was just like what's happening.
Oh yeah.
And a weird thing that came into this too for me in my experience of it is at a certain point in his camp we're like lined up against this wall, and it happened to like back up to like the door to the women's locker room. Like it wasn't actually like an open, like it wasn't like a door. It was like a wall that like, like airport bathrooms, you don't have to touch the door. You go through like a, so I remember being a little kid, I must have been like 3 or something, 4, like I looked like just around the corner, like in a way that should have been designed better. But I saw all these naked women, like,
whoa.
And I remember like this woman walking like in my direction doing her thing, but like completely naked except just like a towel on her head. But like I saw like pubic hair for the first time. And it was like a really weird thing for me because you're just, it's just like, what the fuck? As like a little kid, you're like looking into some preview of like weird psychosexual stuff coming. But the point being is like whether we were like lost in a mall when our mom started shopping or grocery store, there's like our mom comes back and it's not the same mom because like now we know that the mother can have like abandon us. It's like
right.
I can never trust blindly again. That sense of betrayal of like what the fuck? Like I never I didn't have that with my dad. My dad like left us all over the place, doing his like he went to vintage stores and stuff. And like I didn't feel that with my dad, but like with my mom, it was like, holy,
how dare you?
Yeah, like oh, I'm a separate entity, like I can be abandoned. It can be not here, So
yeah, and I think it is that death mother energy really does come from some sense of betrayal. Like in the family, with a parent, because it is that moment of just like, oh my God, I thought we were cool. I thought we were safe. I thought we had trust. And then something happens where there's this massive betrayal, which is why I feel like it is similar with like men and women, anybody's journey for the sexual instinct. I feel like also includes, like, I don't think you can just work on the sexual instinct. Like, right. I think as like, the overlapping of the Enneagram triangle, like, I think you have to work on all three. Absolutely. In order for like that sexual instinct to kind of like, elevate into the way it needs to be. So it's like, and that's where if you want to get archetypal there, it's like self-pres is kind of more mother because it's matter.
Interesting.
And it's the body. And social is father. It is the light. It is air. Wow. It is not grounded. It's spirit. And so matter and spirit, when combined, at the top of the triangle, then creates the third element, the sexual instinct. So that's why it's like, in these stories, you can see these elements, like in Star Wars or in Salome, you can see these elements happening. Like, oh, okay, where's the connection to self-pres? Where's kind of like, where's father, mother, whatever, and how it's like either failing to reach that elevation, or it's like, and it's just stuck in between the two, like how the 6 and the 3 on the triangle are just, bouncing back and forth to each other. Like it's hard to get out there, but each time I feel like each story we're kind of creating or following kind of gets, it's the octaves kind of thing. Like it's getting up high, like higher and higher to like, and that's then reflected in an individual's journey, because it is like you have all of these modes of separation when the personality is developing. So it's just pushing away, and like kind of separating what is me, what is not me. But it's a lot of the time it is just reaction off of this original source, the original like mother and father union. And then the journey is to kind of find like the psychological separation is the thing that is kind of where all of this symbolic language is happening, is like there needs to be a separation in the psychological sense. And that's where the sexual instinct is outside of matter and spirit. Like it's the combination of the two, but it's outside the two. So what I'm trying to say is that, at least what I think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess it's all theoretical. Like,
we're
like,
beyond right and wrong.
Yeah.
We're just in riffing.
It's like, even when you're posing Star Wars to be like in the mind of someone, and like this, it kind of like how we, I talk about dreams, that it's all in your head. So it's just kind of like, all right, where are these figures? What are they? Where do they live? How do they operate? What's their charge? That's where the sexual instinct kind of has nothing to do with the external world, in the sense that
right.
I think, like with women, for example, it can be really, really hard for a woman to understand and be in touch with her own sexuality, because it is constantly being framed in the male gaze. Constantly. And so even in like, you have a woman possibly, gonna go try on outfits and what she likes and stuff like that. There's always unconsciously an other's eyes that she is seeing herself through. Like, it's always happening. And so the sexual instinct, therefore, I don't think in both men and women, like, I don't think it's just about eroticism. I think the eroticism wakes up, like it awakens, and it kind of provides that like fire energy, like that kind of thing. But then, like, even in the pursuit of understanding the anima and animus, they are not sexualized to a person. So like, first they will be projected sexually. So like, your anima will be like, that moment where you saw the women in the bathroom, like that's like, there's the anima, like it is outside of my mom, which it should be, like it's outside and it's something else, and it's like a totally different energy. So like everyone will have that, because we do need the projection externalized so we even see that it's there. But then like your personal journey with your anima will have nothing to do with like being sexually attracted or sexually attractive or whatever. It will be, she becomes your guide, like, not a lover, in a way. Like, she is kind of like the guide to your unconscious. So in Star Wars language, in a sense, Leia is Luke's anima, because she becomes like desexualized. Like at first she kind of is, like then those weird, awkward moments. And then once they find out they're siblings, she becomes a guide for him rather than like a partner. And so it's...
So are you saying the animus thing is always like, when it's like, it's hard to talk about, right? But like in themselves are like not sexualized, and then sometimes we put sexuality over them, but like, I think
they're projected sexually, because you have to think like erotic energy is so strong. It awakens things in you. So I think it's projected in that way because it has to have that charge. Like to be in contact with your inner other is like not a small feat. Like it is intense, and it like contacting or having a bridge to the unconscious is like a huge deal psychologically in the role of individuation. And so that energy has to have like an intense charge to it. So I think that's why it is projected sexually, because in our bodies, that is what like your sexuality awakens, like it awakens in some kind of way. And it, like you see it outside of yourself, and then you learn to go for it. You learn, it's the kind of what you're saying, the Eros, like you start to drive towards it. But that's where like the journey then of actually like being in contact with your inner other in a healthy way, that's the thing that's hard. It's like it can be projected, it's there, but then you kind of have to go through your own journey to have it not be projected any longer. It's like the role of individuation is to kind of withdraw the projections, to not have it like, because that erotic energy is being projected. It's some kind of other, but then you're going to project mother and father stuff on it for quite a long time. And the cycle just continues and continues and continues, like in many different forms in many different people. So it's that role of like actually, and what's like interesting in all these kinds of myths and stories and stuff is that the role of sacrifice is the thing that can actually sort of like get you closer to being in contact with the inner other, is this kind of like constantly sacrificing parts of the ego. And I think it is that sort of like balance between like what is stuck in self-pres, the mother matter, and what is stuck and concretized in social, the father, and like, spirit. And breaking them free is really cutting those parts of ourselves off that we did not choose to have, like really making sacrificial, like ego narratives, like cutting them off and allowing yourself to actually like exist as a full or whole kind of being.
So like when you're saying like sacrifice, you're talking about like on the level of, just something basic like, oh, I've been playing out X pattern or X role in my life because, it has some roots in the early relationships I had with my parents or something. And this is the way I thought I had to be loved or wanted. And it's something, and then you see through it and you can kind of like release that I or that.
Yeah.
Talking about?
Yeah. I would say that.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think, Star Wars in that sense too gives a good, like, the one thing too about Leia's character, at least when I remember watching it, like she kind of softens everyone as well.
Yeah.
Because there has to be like a real great ability to be vulnerable in order to let those parts of ourselves kind of change and move and shift and be more fluid and stuff like that. So that's another aspect of the feminine, not only this death mother, crazy shit, but also like the great mother, which is this nurturing vulnerability that the feminine energy also has, like this kind of creative, poetic kind of side.
One of the things that recent other like media that has really stood out to me that I don't have like fresh reflections on right now, but would just be really interesting to explore is like the movie Alien.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
Long time ago. Another one I'd have to rewatch.
I always liked it, but then I like recently, I've been kind of getting into getting more. Disciplined is not the right way to put it, but like more focused on breath work. And I recently reread holotropic breath work, and all the symbolism in there. And it's by Stanislav and Christina Grof, and Grof also did a book on like something about, it's called like visionary art and something like this. But it's like features heavily H.R. Geiger's work, and talks a lot about the role of like birth trauma and this matter spirit duality that is being trying to be reconciled through these highly sexual, biological, mechanical forms, and like trauma of being born and being physicalized, and the violence of Eros and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And with the movie Alien, like one of the things I love about it is that it's one of the few movies that I can think of. It's like the only movie I can really think of that is so attempted to realize one particular mentally ill artist's vision. It's like with like it made Geiger's visions like real, and and then it's got all this shit where like, another, I think that movie was in the 1970s as well, 1979, I think. Another unusually like well-rounded female lead character in Ripley, and her the ship that they're in is named Mother, right? The AI that controls the ship is called Mother.
Right.
And that this thing, the face hugger aliens, like, impregnate men and women alike, and it's like it's like a male experience of rape, and burst through the chest, the parasite of having a being pregnant, and then like the horrifying, like, there's the death mother, but then there's like the death child, right? Like the awful child, the horrible thing I created, and that it's its own being, and it's gonna have its own hungers, and it's gonna. I was recently talking to a mother who's talking about all the abuse her body went through when her kid had some thing wrong with its mouth and couldn't breastfeed properly, and the abuse her body took, and it's just like the anyway, just like the parasite feeding on you kind of energy. And then like with Ripley, whatever, I don't know if this is stretching too far, but I do feel like in the movie she's like trying to take care of everybody, like she's trying to account for these like dumb kids that have this like monster running around, and they're all like acting like really dumb, and she's the only one that can keep her head up. And then the way that she like she like goes through this whole thing where they're like gonna blow up the ship or whatever, and she goes through this thing where she like takes care of the cat. Like there's a cat in the movie. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And she saves the cat, and then she gets into the escape pod, and it's kind of like Princess Leia in the Bikini, where like she gets like naked and vulnerable, but also kind of like powerful, and just like it's her version of the muscles or whatever. It's like, and then like finally expels the alien or something, but there's and then like the whole robot guy, like there's all those different layers where he's also like a misogynist. You know what I mean? Do you remember that part where he tries to suffocate her with a porn magazine?
Oh, gross. Yeah.
You remember that? That was like horrifying. And I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. That might be another time.
Well, there is like this theme, I think. Well, and first it's interesting too that Leia's mom dies in childbirth. So
that's
she's
right.
already like coming into this scene with the death mother, literally, But also I think there, in most like women who write about like the feminine kind of journey, a lot of it will have to do with being like, since the feminine's in matter, so it's in the body more, it is like, and the masculine comes in as light in the body, and so it's understanding the light in the body and not just the death part of it. But one of the things is, in a lot of feminine journeys, is understanding and knowing the meaningful impact of holding pain and death in the body. So like I think that's why a lot of these female characters have such like a cross to carry in a way, because it's just like this sort of pain that they have, like it is kind of just naturally in the feminine to have this like scar of some kind. And even in like in initiation rites, I'm not sure where at, but I was listening to a person lecturing about it, and they said that in some initiation rites for women, they would do the scarification around the womb to reflect a woman's womb mirroring the cosmos and the pain that you carry, being able to give birth and also, like dictate death and stuff like that. So it's like, there's so much power that like in that has like not much to do with, like, the kind of sexuality in a woman, but like it does in a way, because I think it is that importance of like, self-present social on its own, outside of the mother and the father complex, and outside of like sexual projections in society and stuff. Like, what is it on its own, and how does that make sexuality? And I think there is like, it's the kind of original importance and energetic charge of these two aspects of feminine and masculine energy inside of a person.
Right.
And so, yeah, there is this like deep kind of pain. I think that like the masculine energy has its own kind of pain as well. And it's a very individual, like identity kind of pain, but the feminine pain feels more like cosmic, collective, like it's carrying. So like, you know, the mother is just kind of this massive sort of archetype that kind of holds a lot of energy in it.
I was hanging out with Courtney recently, and I can't remember the context, but we were talking about masculine and feminine, and I don't remember if she was referencing mythology or what she was referencing, but she pointed out that there's a masculine pain that involves some kind of like individualized self-separation from the totality, from the all. That's like some kind of like, I can't remember how she put it, but something about it resonated that was like this, you know, I guess it's maybe like hero's journey kind of thing. Like I'm going outside, I'm severing myself to come back. But there's like this resentment, especially when that is not understood as like my role or like what my journey.
Yeah.
It's like this primal misogyny or something about like I'm separate from the cosmos, you know, like this kind of horror.
Well, and I mean, as an image, it's interesting. I'm kind of combining a few people, and one of them is James Hillman for this, which I think this was in the Soul's Code, and you'd probably really like that book just on its own, despite what we're talking about. But so the image is like the mother, you know, you're in your little nuclear family, and so your mom is the one who keeps you close to her body. She nurtures you. She she is the source of basically how you understand to nurture yourself, how you understand to love yourself, and all of the importance of the body. This is how it's supposed to go, right? Like, so archetypally, the goddess is like the powers of the body itself, and the complete trust in it, and how that works. And that's why even too, all of these stories that we're talking about is interesting, because these are at times where women are being put unconscious when they're having children. You know, like in order to give birth, this is back in like, you know, 50s, 60s, 70s, they would just drug women up to the point where they weren't even giving conscious birth to their children, right? So that's why you wonder then why you have these female characters that are fighting these like disgusting, you know, kind of like space monsters.
Right.
So it's like, you know, the mother, the goddess is going to be that like trust and that closeness to that kind of energy. And that right out the get-go is just fucked in most societies. And then the father archetypally is this image of you're in your little nuclear family, you're playing on your own or whatever, and dad walks out the door because dad is now the one that goes to work, the one that goes to, you know, supposedly, you know, the kind of spiritual sort of side, like he's going to church, and he comes back with all of this wisdom, all of this what's happening on the outside, what's happening in the new information, the light, like that kind of air energy. Like he is literally the one that leaves and comes back with new things. And then you have these father images being trapped in like our real fathers who like I don't even know if I need to paint the pictures of how most real fathers are, but no offense, dads out there, but like, you know, there's, if you read James Hillman's book, he just like really shits on the kind of like lazy father that sits in front of the TV and like is totally disconnected from life and stuff like that. So the father image is also trapped in something as well. So you have these two images that are already like, I mean, moms and dads aren't obviously purposefully this way. Like it's trauma. So it's just like years and years of trauma that nobody asked for, you know, that kind of thing. But that's where like the psychological journey of separating those original energies that are like so potent and like deeply creative, both of them in their own ways, like separating them from the actual images of what your mother was, what your father was, you know, whatever projection they went on to, like that would also have huge implications for your connections sexually as well, because those images are therefore put into the lover or, you know, the other, whatever it may be.
Right.
Like they're unconsciously put into them too. And so it's really like going back to the source as a person's individual journey in order to understand and break off those projections. If you have God, goddess, which then gets projected onto mom, dad, which then gets projected on to men, women, which then gets projected onto lover.
Yes.
So like really understanding, like going back up that, or whichever direction you have to go inward in order to like really break that projection off is like a huge journey.
Yes.
That's individuation. Yeah.